Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is well. Randomly, this feels like I've kind of rushed on. I promise you I haven't. But hopefully it's still going to be okay. We've had a pretty decent week, to be honest. Price action-wise, not too bad. We've got work to do. We'll talk through that. But I think we've got to say that in the last 7 days, relatively positive. We've had generally positive economic news that's coming out of the United States. Banana skin tomorrow, I suppose, with the UK budget, but I'm not sure that's going to really affect the global markets too badly. And then, maybe some of this good news is because we haven't had too much conversation for Donald Trump about these tariffs, but the reality is that those tariffs are coming in next week, so we can't ignore that. But, I can't sit here and just be like, still doom and gloom. Bitcoin has been doing its thing. We are starting to see some positive climbs up. We've hit some important levels that we'll go through. Still a bit of work to do before we can say that this is either a recovery or just a rebound, shall we say. But we're going to dive into that. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. I'll try and get around through those. And the big thing I want to talk about is, have we fallen for it again, I suppose? Do we, and I mean we as in retail, do we just fall for this every time? Same old move and just get convinced to leave our positions, sell our Bitcoin, passing it on to those that are braver perhaps than some of us are. And how many times do we have to have this story told to us before we learn our lessons from it? So I want to try and go through that a little bit there. That does not mean that we're out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination, but just to have a look at where the smart money's putting their money right now. I am generally better than I was last week, so thanks for everyone for asking. And I hopefully will make it through this without coughing my guts up. But without further ado, let's just dive straight in. And I normally leave these charts clear, but we've had these lines on for a while, certainly on the Bitcoin one, the 95 and the 92,000, the 89,000 we put on last week, and that was one of the levels that we really wanted to see get above. I think it was actually around about 88,500, so I might have put that line incorrect there, but we can kind of see that since, remember this is a 3-day time scale, so three candles ago we've made that strong move up. We were low 80s this time last week. We got up to around about 89,000 yesterday. Still got 4 hours till this candle closes, but it's nice to see that move up. We're going to have a look at sort of how that's forming and what this could lead to and where we see it. But the reality is a nice strong move there. And again, when we look down on the bottom left, I appreciate my ugly mug is in the way, so let's just do it. Bitcoin dominance, again, continuing to climb up. And it is, for me at least, certainly on the 3-day time frame, weekly, we'll have a look at dominance in more detail later, but it's continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. So I still feel right now that it's probably more of a Bitcoin season than it is an altcoin season. I think a lot of the data kind of suggests that that's the case at the moment. And for me, I'm still suggesting that, a move back up towards that 64%, is where I would see the more logical move to go. There are some patterns that are playing out which might suggest something completely different, and we'll look at that when we look at Bitcoin dominance later. And crypto market cap, what's happened there? So this is total 3. That's Bitcoin dominance. Total 3. And again, a bit like Bitcoin, in we have seen a bit of a recovery, and some alts have actually done quite well over the last few days. That's good to see, of course, for those that have just held on to our alt positions. We're probably not where we were 90 days ago, but every kind of recovery needs that turning point, and that's it. I think there's a lot more work to do, unfortunately, with altcoins. We're currently sitting about 840 billion. For me, we need to add another 100 billion on that. That 940 level, where that white line is at the moment, we've really got to get above that. Now, if we suddenly do move into an alt season, I can assure you that's going to get recovered very quickly. But as I mentioned, alt season does seem a bit of a stretch away right now. Ethereum not really doing much, but a lot of the other big ones, we have seen some pretty good days. some are actually kind of almost 50% beyond where they were at their lows only 2 weeks ago. So some are making it. Ethereum a lot sluggish compared to the rest, which I think is maybe holding it back. But remember, this is total 3, so it doesn't include Ethereum within this. And then BitTensor. Oh, that's not BitTensor. This is. And again, we'll go into that. This line here, oh, it's not connected now, but on the daily, it kind of hits those quite nicely. That was where we're running in. We have seen that move from 210 up to around about 280. I talked about 280 and 310 being important levels, and I kind of feel that's where it is. For me, nice that we've got up to this line. I feel we're running into some sort of resistance potentially, and I want to see these candles kind of climb above that line. There are EMAs, there are fib levels to contest with as well. Start building on that and climbing up. But again, you know, I don't know, 40% increase in the last, 2-3 weeks. So, okay. Yep, hello there to everybody. Let's just jump in with where we are, because if you were on Twitter last week, even if you were watching some YouTube videos, reading sentiment in any Discord channels you may be in, it was pretty dire. It was, you know, everyone was looking at the negative. People were talking about actual bear markets. And yet, here we are 7 days later with a couple of consecutive green candles, and suddenly everyone's back to being bullish. Everyone's back to, you know, praising their diamond hand natures and calling out the paper hands that sold. And I don't think we're kind of like that, to be honest. I think, you know, we stiff upper lip when the price goes down, and we don't get too ahead of ourselves when the price goes up. But the reality actually is, as this article goes in to say, that there are some signals that are starting to appear that maybe suggesting that actually we might be heading into some bullish territory. And it's not just about what the whales are necessarily doing here. It's other TA signals as well. And the hash ribbon is not something we talk about that often, because it doesn't actually flash a signal all that often, but we have covered it quite a bit in the past. And effectively, I think with, you know, certainly in a bull market, it has 100% accuracy. I think in the 2022 bear market, it printed a flash buy signal, which didn't actually substantiate itself. So it has had one tripping up in recent history. But generally, when these flash, we do see you know, Bitcoin's price action rise up. And it goes into here to effectively, you know, it's basically taking into account the hash rate and also Bitcoin miners' profitability, and kind of seeing not necessarily where they've capitulated, but where they're struggling. And that's typically has indicated a time in which it's actually an ideal time to buy, because it generally leads to price reversals. It shows it on here, but I've actually got the chart sort of moving up. So this is it. If you want the hash ribbons, just go into the indicator, just go on, type in hash ribbons, and there's one that has like 14,000. You can just put it on. So let's just, I don't know what, just a second. I don't know what that is there. So we've got Bitcoin's price action. We're on the daily at the moment. I suppose we can probably put it on the weekly. I don't think it's going to change it too much. Nope. But at least we can see the candles now. And we can just see that actually, as of this week, the blue circle has shown to say that this is a buy. Let's have a look at it back historically. So we've got a buy signal here, which kind of happened in the middle of the summer. Okay, yeah, we did fall down. We had the carry trade unwind. But then we saw, you know, relatively soon after that, 3 or 4 weeks, price moved from 50,000 up to 100,000. So pretty good signal there. We go all the way back into 2023, sort of again last summer, or the summer of 23, we had that buy signal. Now this one, the buy signal hit this week, we dropped again, and then we went up, and we went from, you know, 25,000 to 70,000. So big moves. Like I say, not necessarily immediately happening, but signifying good prices. And then getting out of the bear market, we had a buy signal here in January 2023. Interestingly, I said about it printing a buy signal in 2022. On the daily it did, but actually when we look on the weekly, it hasn't. It's gone green, but it's blue. It's the blueprint that when it tells you to buy. This is kind of just sort of like everything is looking towards that continuation of capitulation, but actually then further falling happened and the buy never triggered. And again, 2021, in that run up to the second half of the bull cycle, we saw a buy print. We saw it on the run up here, and we saw it after the COVID crash. So plenty of times in which it's happened. So it's something that we should perhaps take note of, that actually once printed. I'm not saying we're going up but guaranteed from here. But history has said that when this prints, generally within a few weeks, we are starting to see the prices are starting to move, not just upwards, but strongly as well, which kind of ties in with a few of the things that we're going to go in and talk about. And last week we went on to, and I'm just refreshing what we talked about last week, but last week we talked about MACD, RSI, MFI, few other signals. But the point is that if we look down on the actual indicators at the moment, we had these lines that were drawn, because you've got to remember, we didn't actually have these printed yet, but we saw historically hitting this white line on the RSI had leaned to bounces. And you know what? We've hit it, and we have now continued to bounce up from there. Price action has turned following that drop. Again, you don't take them on their own, don't take it, but you can use it, in conjunction with others, actually suggesting that maybe we are starting to see some sort of turnaround. Something we went through in detail last week, so I'm not going to rehash it now. But again, with the MFI, it's come back down. It's hit this level, previous levels that it has hit in the past, and we've seen those bounces from. On the weekly time frame, matter of fact, it's hit it 3 other times, and every time has led to strong bounces from it. We've started to turn that around now. Obviously, I'm going to want to see a couple more candles to confirm that this is going upwards, but a good place to be nevertheless. Marks, but GameStop just announced they're going to hold BTC on their balance sheet. Well, that's good. And we all know that Wall Street bets GameStop. It's a diamond hands degens play. It certainly was 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about it a bit later on, like the top 70 companies and their BTC holdings. What amazes me is the 70th on that list actually only has 54 BTC. So, top 7 companies in the world, MicroStrategy obviously being one at the other end of the spectrum. But down to that bottom end, 70th largest Bitcoin holding for a company, only having 54 Bitcoin. Interesting. But yeah, anyway, got sidetracked there. And then, we start to see articles like this. Bitcoin has pumped over the last couple of days. Will we now get to that 92K level? Now, I don't really care. These are just clickbait titles. It's not necessarily what I want to go through there. But what this article goes on to talk about is it talks about, the economic data that has been coming out of the United States over the last couple of weeks. And to be honest, it has actually been relatively good. Now, unfortunately for us, that is a bit of a double-edged sword, which we'll go through. But one of the things it talks about is that actually, are we starting to see questions about whether or not the US is going to make it into a recession, or is some of this economic data at least delaying the chances of the US going into a recession? Now, that double-edged sword I talk about, very high level, what do we really want to see happen for our bags to pump? We want to see interest rates come down, and we want to see QE take over. So what's the fastest way that the United States could do that is to actually enter into a recession. That recession would mean that they would slash the interest rate, and then when it got to a really bad thing, they turn the money printer on to try and stimulate their economy again. So that's sort of like, very quickly what we would ideally want to see. But if actually data is coming out now to suggest that the United States may not be entering into a recession, then there's 2 problems there. One, yes, okay, interest rates will likely still come down, but the speed at which they come down may be slower. We're already talking about maybe only 2 rate cuts this year of in and around 50 to 75 basis points, which is nowhere near where we want to see that. And 2, there's no actual need to cease quantitative tightening and to actually commence that quantitative easing. Sorry, I thought my dog was in here. Just must have made a loud sneeze outside the door. So that's sort of a couple of things we're like, oh, right, well, that's not the best news for us in terms of really seeing that stimulation and that growth like we saw in the early parts of 2021. I understand it was a different world back then. And this isn't the website that I've used in the past, and I honestly can't find where it is. So I'll be honest, I just Googled this one before I went live to try and have a look at where the US recession probability is. So I don't know what data is put into the graph that we're currently looking at. And this is forecasting, sort of 9 months ahead. So it's sort of saying January 2026, there's a 23% chance that the US is going to be in a recession. But the most important thing I find about this is, look, we've had that massive climb upwards through 2023, 2024, where they, let's face it, moved the goalposts, and we probably should have actually been in a recession. But for whatever reason, the way that we defined recession was changed. And that's where we found ourselves. But as we look into 2025, okay, granted, it's sort of an M formation there, but generally the trend is actually suggesting that the chances of a recession is going to keep on dropping as we go through the year and as the data starts to present itself. So, the markets are buoyed, and it's not just Bitcoin at the moment. It is traditional stock markets are starting to see that actually a lot of the economic news that's come out over the last couple of weeks has been positive, and we've seen improvements on the S&P, on the Nasdaq, on some of the big stocks, and of course on Bitcoin. Now, we went through this last week, so I don't want to harbour going through it again, but we had the FOMC meeting last week. We kept it at 4.5%, and it was a relatively dovish discussion that was being had from Chairman Powell afterwards. But, the data that he's looking at, sort of CPI, PPI, unemployment, housing, new housing, existing housing sales, all of those is actually at the moment kind of coming in positive, showing that there is still strength within the economy. And so with that kind of news, I don't really think, we've got a while now, it's May till the next FOMC meeting, but I don't think there's any rush right now with how that information is coming out that we need that interest rates to move along. So as I said, double-edged sword there. I covered a lot of it last week. If you're interested in sort of going through that in a bit more detail, just have a look at the recording from that. But I find it, we talk about this in Discord, we talk about it in the trading pubs that, we're going to see, at some stage we're going to have to slash those interest rates. Some stage the money printer is going to have to be turned on. Well, that's because we were kind of talking about seeing some form of recession this year. But the data just keeps on defying us. Now, again, hey, maybe they're moving the goalposts, or maybe they'll swing the goalposts the other way so that we are officially in a recession. We'll have to wait and see. But it is worthwhile just keeping an eye on some of the data that's coming through. It's a relatively quiet week this week if I get our week onto this. There's not really too much that's going to come out. There's unemployment, I suppose, on Thursday. And I'm trying to see if there's anything really of importance next week. There's another bit of unemployment stuff. But no, we've got a couple of weeks of relatively quiet news data. Next week, we do know about the tariffs, which I think is a ticking time bomb that we need to discuss. This has been a bit of an interesting play because, since Trump took office in January of this year, there's always been talk about tariffs. And, it's been a game of tennis. Head shaking all around. Donald Trump can say one thing, someone else will come and retaliate. He'll then change his mind and say something else. And so you're kind of left in a position where we don't really know where we stand on this thing. But the reality of it is that those tariffs are causing, or were causing, nervousness across the traditional markets. And whether or not you like it, Bitcoin is so heavily invested with institutional investment at the moment, it is correlated with the traditional markets. And so we've seen that sell-off over the last sort of, 6 to 8 weeks on the Nasdaq after their all-time highs, on the S&P. We've seen the flights to gold making new all-time highs, etc. And I'm not saying it's completely down to the discussion on the tariffs, but just the way that Donald Trump has approached these tariffs, it is causing unease. And there's a reason I'm not back 100% in the market, despite Bitcoin's relatively positive moves over the last couple of weeks. And that's because next week, 2nd of April, some tariffs, and I use the word some because we've no idea what Donald's going to say between now and then, are due to come into effect. These retaliatory tariffs, Canada, Mexico, China, Europe was being talked about with putting tariffs on wine and champagne and all of that kind of stuff. And then I think even last week, Donald came out and said, we're probably just going to tariff every country in the world. And then a couple of days ago, he was like, well, actually, we may not go that far. There may be some that we decide we're not going to, but he didn't really list who they were. And so between now and the 2nd of April, we have no idea if he's going to double down on those tariffs or if the likes of Canada, Mexico, and China get some sort of relief from these tariffs, and then we don't see the reciprocal tariffs coming into effect. We will unfortunately have to wait and see. And I just feel that is one of the things that could really trip up any positive momentum we had. There's no control over it. Anytime he opens his mouth, something could come out. So we just need to bear that one in mind. This article kind of breaks everything down. I'm not going to run through it, but I'll post it in Discord afterwards. At least it gives you a timeline of all of the different tariff discussions as we wait to see where they go. But just bear that in mind. A week today, those tariffs are due to go live. I think it's a week today. Might be tomorrow. I think it is tomorrow. I'm trying to work out how many days there are in March. Okay. Let's have a chat about, have we been played? Are we being tricked? And the reason I say that is I come on here and I talk to you guys, I mean, for the last 2 or 3 years about market makers, about institutions, about smart money, you know, kind of just being magicians, really. Sleight of hand, you know, sort of drawing our attention in one direction whilst doing something else with their hands in another direction. And, you know, every time we talk about it, it seems to make so much sense. And yet as retail, not us, just generally retail, we fall for it just about every time. And so, you know, it's fair to say that the last 6 weeks, sentiment has been in the toilet, particularly during February, and the early parts of March, where we saw the fear and greed index drop down to 10 in a bull market. And we stayed in extreme fear for a few weeks at a time. And everyone was talking about a bear market. We were seeing institutional investors were selling at a rate of knots as well. But then you start to have a look at some of the on-chain data that comes out. And I don't know if this is going to work. We'll find out. So this here is just whale wallets. Okay, so and whale activity over the whole life of, well, Bitcoin down to 2015. I'm going to zoom in, but you can kind of see that, you know, generally this has just been, you know, moving from bottom left to top right. And yeah, there have been some pullbacks, but interestingly, those pullbacks have been at times where actually price has gone up because smart money, they sell into the rallies, they buy when things come back down. So what did we have? You know, the Trump inauguration, sorry, the election win, 60 odd thousand to 108,000, big sell-off, a big reduction, shall we say, in Bitcoin balances from the whales as they were being smart. Then as it started to just stagnate in and around there, we started to see them buy back. And then what's happened? Since that 108,000, we dropped that down to 76,000. You would think, oh, well, you know, everyone's talking negative sentiment, but what have the whales gone and done? They've continued to buy. This has just climbed up. I'll zoom in now. It's just continued to climb. It's hard to see. Let's just get rid of that. Oops, what's happened there? So you can see the price action is in a gray line on a black background. Not ideal, especially when I then put the whale activity over it. But you can kind of see that the price has dropped down, as we've seen. But the whale activity has generally trended upwards in that continued direction there. And this one, you know, well, I can't read what day it is because it doesn't appear on my screen, but I'm assuming it's today's day. You know, we've seen a marked increase from, I don't know, maybe 295,000, and then in a day going all the way up to 320,000. So, you know, a big, strong move today, likely suggesting what we all know, because we've all seen it happen before, smart money's buying when the fear is there. And we talked about that, and we've talked about that for 6 weeks, when actually, well, maybe not 6, but 4 weeks, whilst we have had extreme fear, this is likely going to be, in hindsight, the ideal time to be buying Bitcoin. Maybe not altcoins, but certainly Bitcoin. If you're into stocks, probably an ideal time to be getting into those, because this is it, blood in the water and all that kind of stuff. So that seems to have played out very well. And then we can have a look at a couple of other ones here. This actually is just a whole host of whale data. It's on Crypto Quant. It's all kind of there. A lot of it's telling exactly the same story, but I think we get sort of a cleaner picture here. What's the date range on this? That goes quite far back. But we can kind of see in this recent, if I put my cursor over it, disappears. So we're looking at the one on the left-hand side, and I'm looking at the red sort of pink line, and you can kind of see as price, the Bitcoin price is the white line just directly below me, dipping down. You can kind of see the red is moving up. And remember, this is whale holding and the monthly percentage change of that. Or it's just easier to actually have a look at the one on the right, because the blue there is effectively a moving average summarizing it over the last 30 iterations. And you can kind of see how strong that move up has been all the way through this. We're just seeing that climb up through there. So it's a time, it's a story as old as time. We're just going to trick you. We're going to put out that news, that sentiment that things are particularly bad. You're going to sell. Obviously, you need to sell it to somebody. We'll happily buy it off you. And then you know what's going to happen. It will start to turn around. And they do it with perp trading as well, which we've gone through. And as Bitcoin price starts moving back towards the all-time high and everyone's wanting to buy it, what do you think is going to happen? These whales, these smart money, institution money, whatever, they're going to be the ones that are selling it to us at a much higher price. We've sold it to them at a discount. We're going to buy it back like the fools that we are at a much higher price. So, we may well have actually missed that opportunity again now if you haven't been buying Bitcoin, because we're going to start to move up. But just bear that in mind. This story plays out throughout the history of Bitcoin, and it will happen again. So if we're in the bull market, and there's nothing to say that we're broken the bull market trend, we'll have a look at that in a moment, then, I'm not saying to buy the dip. I'm not saying to be the guy every time it drops, buy the dip, but just have a look at key levels of buying. And extreme fear is an ideal time to always buy. Yeah, you might not be able to hit the exact bottom, but we're getting there. And look, how many weeks over the last few weeks was I looking at this, getting worried about BlackRock and my canary in the coal mine because it was constant reds? Well, now we've had over a week and a half of just buying from BlackRock at the moment. And if you actually have a look on the far right hand side, as a whole, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the last 9 days have been positive days for the ETFs right now. I know today we go into Arkham, we have a little scroll down. Let's just refresh this just in case. Wisdom Tree, ARK, Fidelity, BlackRock, all buying today. So yes, there's going to be some sales within there, and this isn't always a concrete assumption. I just prefer to wait for this to update. But I have got a very strong feeling that the 25th of March 2025 is going to be a green day, a black day, whatever you want to call it, a positive net inflow day for Bitcoin. So yeah, institutions continuing to buy. And we have a look at the timing of this. We're on the weekly time frame. Down at the bottom, we've got the crypto fear and greed index just overlaid. It's on the weekly. So remember, on the daily, we actually went all the way down to 10. On the weekly, it's taking just a summary of that. But have a look. 10th of March, we went into the extreme fear. That was the week of the bottom, and we bought it. And you go back now to the ETFs. We commenced in the 10th, but actually we saw from the 12th, we started to see it in the black. And then, okay, we did have a negative day on the 13th, but then we started to move our way through positively there. So this is, the ETF is effectively just, a spectrum of where the smart money is. The smart money waited till we were in absolute fear. Sentiment was in the toilet, and then they started to buy again. And so, yeah, it's exactly there. And, we can see it on the daily. We were down at 10, but look, it is higher lows and higher highs. Okay, maybe not at the moment. We said last week we need to get into the 50s. We're only at 46 at the moment, but we're starting to make those moves up. And I think a few more positive days, and this will easily move back into, well, we're in neutral territory. Actually, I think we're technically still fear. Let's have a look. Yeah, we are still fear. Neutral is 50, but we're not too far off from that. Now, that's for Bitcoin. We're, alt season at the moment is 17 out of 100. So that's effectively saying that over the last, I don't know how long, I think it's 7 days, only 17 of the top 100 have outperformed Bitcoin. So we're not in alt season right now. The sentiment here is definitely still saying that we are in a Bitcoin season. And here over the last 90 days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's only been 10 that have outperformed Bitcoin in the last 90 days. As a matter of fact, it doesn't make pretty looking when you look at these altcoins. Basically, over the first quarter of this year, most of them have been 40+% in the red. And then we get into Bitcoin dominance on the weekly here. And again, we are making those higher highs and those higher lows. Yes, we had that big sell-off down here, but we haven't quite sort of gotten out of that. Now, what I would say with this, and this is a bit of hope for us, is, I can't unsee this, and I appreciate it's the weekly, it's not the most accurate, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be. I mean, I'll put it on the daily, see if we can maybe tidy it up a little bit. But, you know, there's definitely some sort of support and resistance that we are, you know, aggressively running into here. And we don't have too much left of this apex. And so we may actually be at a point where there is a mini alt season to be had, much like what we had in December down here, just to see some sort of relief coming back down there, because we're getting close to the apex. The compressions generally do play out. That being said, I still feel that I can't get rid of that. Let's just get rid of that. I still feel, I know it only happened for 5 minutes, but I still feel there's a chance that we at least try and attack some sort of level in and around there, take out that wick before that move back down. But I will accept that compression, which I've now deleted, is there. And if that does play out, we are looking at a move back down and a move maybe, you know, maybe to 58. But that move from 61 to 58 doesn't sound like much, but that'll be pretty darn good for altcoins. So, you know, just bear that one in mind with what you're doing and how you're having a look at it. Reese's put thoughts on Trezor Safe 5 hardware wallet. Is it worth changing from an original Ledger Nano S? Well, I've never been a Ledger person. I'm a Trezor guy. So I would always say yes. Ledger has, you know, a little bad press at the moment with sort of that backdoor route to be able to recover any lost funds. And if you lose your seed phrase and all that kind of stuff, there's some concerns around that. So you know, hardware wallets, I actually have two. You know, I have Tangent and I also have Trezor. So I kind of split stuff across that. Trust me, having a Ledger is better than having nothing. I just don't like the tiny little buttons and the UI on it. That's the only reason I didn't go with it. Greg said, did I find my lost USDT? No, I have not. So I think I'm writing that one off, unfortunately. If you tighten up the daily, is that a Kobo? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. So what we're doing. I mean, you could do, yeah, if you did, instead of doing wicks, you do bodies there. Bodies there. You're right, we have kind of bust out of that bottom bit a little bit. You know what I'd like to see? Because for me, for a Kobo, and this is probably just preference, is we haven't quite Kobo'd one, because you draw that there, although I might not have actually drawn it. I'd prefer to see down there, you know, a sharper move down to get further away to really see a definitive move back up. Because at the moment, you know, we're talking about 0.28% move in and around there. So maybe if it can just sort of edge up and then do it. But that's definitely, I accept, maybe we have broken out to the right there. It is just about a positive day for we're on the 2-day time frame. Apologies, I thought I was on the daily there. Let's try and tidy this up then. So now on the daily, okay, yep, I see what you mean now on the daily. I still would like it to come out. I may be nitpicking there, you know, sort of, as I say, that stronger move, but I can't deny that hasn't happened. So I think that's definitely one to note. A good spot there. Okay. Let's have a talk about Bitcoin. So 12-hour time frame, what are we looking at the moment? Standard kind of things there. We don't need to really worry about that resistance line at the moment. It's miles away. I mean, to hit it from where we are now is 130,000. For me, I kind of wonder if this is going to be our end of bull run resistance line somewhere, you know, well, over here or at 160, 180 kind of level. But anyway, let's get into the words. We've still got the fib levels. And remember, this is wild. This fib level is actually stretching all the way back to the March last year high. I know it doesn't look like it's gone that far. I just moved it across. So it's gone from March so March 24 to August 24, and then everything's kind of just played out from there. And I haven't really found the need at the moment to change that. I know when I do some other charting later on, I move the fib level around to be a bit more accurate. But, you know, the big picture side of things, it's held up pretty well. And so what are we really looking at the moment? So that white dotted vertical line that's running up and down, that was just last week's call. Why have I done that? Well, because Last week we talked about these boxes, and if you remember, these boxes, for those that are new or just don't remember, which is fair enough, they're just liquidation heat maps that are taken from CoinAnk, which we'll go through in a moment, but they're just overlaid onto here. And so we were talking about what is the closest path of resistance, because at the time, this liquidation between 85,000 and 87,000, let's call it, was just above price action, and we were down at the time at 81k. And we would just talked about, the smart move would be to take it up to that fib level, take out this liquidation level, and then look to potentially reverse it. And that's exactly what they did. They moved price up there, they brought price back down, and then funnily enough, we've started to find a bottom. And what we're now seeing is that people are starting to get excited, to go long. And so we're starting to see build-up of liquidation levels. These are quite high leverage levels for them to be built up so close to where price action is. But that's now what we're seeing. And so we've got price action in and around, well, effectively 79,000 to 83. There is a little bit of a break in between that. But we do still have some shorts as well, which is around about 89,500 to 91,000. So for me, they're the two levels. And given the fact that we've actually sort of, excuse me, can I hide these? Don't know if I can hide drawings. That can work. Nope. Undo. Okay, unhide. We'll just have to try and work through it. I suppose I could delete them, but I like them saved. Sod it. Let's just do it. Just so we can see a little bit clearer. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. So, these 12-hour candles, remember, but over the last week, we kind of battled with this 272. We came up to the 414. We've finally broken above it. We're starting to build some support. And it seems to me like actually the more logical route now would be to try and take out that 89,500 to 91,000. So that is where I would suggest the more logical move for the market makers to go. What would that also do? That will also, I've deleted them now, but that would also really start to shade in. People start to go super long. Bull market's back on. We're starting to look really good. And we'll start to see that these lightly colored green areas turn into these sort of like bright green and yellow kind of areas as people go more and more long, which ultimately is just enticing some movement for market makers at a later time. And whilst I am positive with price action, as you'll see in a minute, I'm not writing off of one more move down, whether that be because of Donald and his Trump or whatever, of his tariffs even, or whatever it may be, or just actually we need that one more move back down to complete patterns, and then we can start to look for sort of moving back up. But even on this, I think I'm probably going to do it on another chart. I will do. What am I trying to do on this week? Weekly. So Bitcoin, weekly time frame. Don't worry, we are going to go down to lower time frames in a moment. I always kind of worry, I'll be honest, when I see something like this. Now, this is 3 weeks in a row, 3 positive green red candles in a row, which is great to see. But look at the size of the drop that we've had and then the angle we've come back up. And right now, the candle sizes are a lot smaller. Are we running into exhaustion? I haven't got it up, but I can assure you that volume isn't particularly great for this move back up here. And my worry is always, let me, if I can just, is this actually just a relief bounce? We're going to get tired and then a move back down. And there's something about, V-shaped recoveries are fine, but V-shaped recoveries, you really want to see, it recover by now and actually get back up to that 94 level, try and take out this candle. We haven't managed to do that. Matter of fact, what have we really done? Let's draw it on, but I bet you it's just a 50%. If I went from there to there, we're just past the 50%. I do it from candle to candle. We're bang on the 50% level at the moment. 50% pullbacks, they happen so often. That causes some concern for me. But I said 5 minutes ago, we're still in a bull market, and we are still in a bull market. The absolute biggest indicator of whether or not we're in a bull market is not a 20% fall. That is what there is in traditional markets. Greater than 20% fall, we would consider ourselves to be in a bear market. Now the Nasdaq fell about 14%, so technically that is a correction. But Bitcoin, more volatile. We see 30% falls all the time. So we don't go off that. We go off other things. And for me, it's always been the 50 EMA. You know, you lose them and continue to lose below the 50 EMA on the weekly time frame, then you're going to have trouble. But what's happened beautifully, and we talked about this, it's come down, it's kissed off the 50 EMA. We've seen it bounce back across. So that's positive to see. But when we saw on the 20 EMA, what has been the exact point in which we've found struggling at the moment? It is the 20 EMA. And we've seen that before. When we come down to this 50 EMA, we come back and we bounce off it. Come down to the 50 EMA, we come back, we bounce off it. So, you know, it's not surprising. It's a weekly. So, you know, 20 EMA is pretty strong on the weekly for us to maybe see a move back down from there to then build up some momentum to get back through. And I think that's something that we've got to just bear in mind. If I then flow this on at the same time, which is a fib, you know, body to body now. Oops, I can't quite get it. Bang on. Nope, it's messing around with me. About as good as we're going to get. And we have, you know, that 20 level is pretty close. That 20 level is at basically 88,800, and the fib level's $800 more. So, we might slightly spike through it, but you know, that is then the next likely thing that's going to hold us back there. And we almost came down to the 50%. It's on the weekly. It's a bit, you know, fair enough. The 50 is going to be a bit stronger there. But maybe that move back down to that 81,000 then is where we find ourselves. Worst case, we come back down, unfortunately, to the 50 EMA. But if we can't clear this 20 or this fib level, the logical level for me is at 81,000. The 81, I deleted them. Of course I did. There we go. That 81,000 is going to take you right back into this level here, those liquidation levels. And if we have moved up, as I mentioned, that actually might start to get thicker and be seen more attractive. We come back down, maybe take out down to 82, and we look to bounce back up. That's the kind of way that I'm thinking on this. Oops, one. But also, let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of that and that. Let's put it on the daily. Because, well, as we talked about that compression on Bitcoin dominance, there's some sort of compression playing out here. Now, maybe I can't draw it as well there. Maybe it actually needs to come in from across here. I don't know. But ultimately, there's something there that is suggesting that, you know, it's finding support and resistance, but coming to an apex, a climax, whatever you want to do. And maybe we might see over the next 4 or 5 days, this sort of then have some sort of reaction. Reality of that would be, you know, the high probability move would be a rising compression in a falling markets continuation pattern. We're going to see price continue to move back down. Let's get rid of those, and then let's talk about something that I talk about all the time, which is, you know, that M formation, W formation. And so, you know, what do we normally see? We see at the tops some form of M formation. We see that drop back down, retrace, drop back down, retrace, final drop back down, W formation. The pattern continues, and I can't help but unsee this on the day. We got some form of M formation there, and then it's a case of, right, well, where are we potentially seeing some of these drops back down? Is that drop 1, drop 2 consolidation? We've got one more drop to go, and then off to the races. Or actually, is it? Oops, I can't do that. We actually have this is the top of the M. Drop 1 comes up, drop 2 comes up, drop 3, and now we're just waiting for the second part of that W formation, and off we go. When we go on to looking at with EMAs in a second, you're coming to see that actually this may well be the likely play for this to turn that around. In fact, we'll move on to that now, and you can kind of see here when we're looking at using the 50 EMA. So we're on the daily again. We've got that M there. We come back down. We hit the 50. We come back down. Hit the 50 again. We've come back down. We've hit the 50. So that's 1, 2, 3. Really poorly drawn. And then maybe we see some form here. And then off we go to sort of climb back out of that. So a lot of things for me are suggesting that whilst this has been a strong move up, let's get rid of this as well. I'm kind of thinking that actually maybe we do need to see that next move down, forming that double bottom before we can move across. And that double bottom kind of ties in a lot of things. What I would say though, I'm betting on the daily. What's holding us at the moment, 50 EMA, but what do we climb above? And what I harked on about this last week, that 200 EMA at 85,000 is going to be a problem for us. And it was a little bit of a problem initially, and it took us 2 attempts to get through it. But we have actually last 3 days, or 2.5 days, been able to hold above it. And what we're now getting is the 10 and the 20 and the 200 all converging on that one spot. So that's kind of like some sort of confluence going in there. And that sort of 85 level is pretty strong right now. So maybe we might be able to just see ourselves. But we are getting squeezed between those two. And for those of you that are aware, the vector candles there, we're going blue. So yes, it is above normal levels, but it's not the green levels. It's not plus 200%, not times. We're going, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm seeing it. We drop it down to the 4 hour, and actually the 4 hour for me is looking, actually a little bit better in the sense of we are trending this way. Again, we're above the 50, which we weren't. We're above the 200, and we're now just sort of squeezed between the 200 and the 800 EMA. Let's get that. Potentially, what I don't like seeing right now is the fact that we've come up to the 200 EMA, we've been rejected, we've tried it again, but we haven't even been able to get as high as that right-hand side, maybe suggesting there is some form of M formation and that move back down. But what I would say, just look at all this noise over the last 2 weeks, and not a single vector candle has been left in its wake except for what's happened over the last 48 hours. So something is telling me that these vector candles here are likely going to be, price is going to be drawn towards those. Not to mention the fact that the 50 EMA on the 4 hour sitting at that 85 level, which we talked about being, that confluence on the daily time frame. I just see a move back down here to try and sort of close out these vectors. I still see a move potentially lower than that, but a very high probability that we take this bit down here, especially given that the 4 hours got 3 hours to go on that candle. So there's still plenty of work it can be doing, and I should have zoomed in so you can see it. But right now, it just hasn't been able to clear it, hasn't been able to take it with volume. And so potentially it's looking like that. And again, you look at it on the hourly, similar sort of thing. So we move up, we got away from everything. What did it come back down? It's hit that 50 EMA, it's bounced from it, but we just haven't been able to get through it, with volume, with speed. And so we're actually at a point where potentially retesting ourselves and moving back down. Sorry, what's Greg put here? Recent weekly candles aren't vector candles, which gives some hope, but recovery zones exist around 94 versus 76. Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to, we kind of mentioned this 68 down here as a vector candle. It kind of got to the 50% level of all of these ones, but really the 50% level of that candle, as you say, 74,000. I'm going to still say, as long as we close above that 50 EMA, any spike below it, it's fine. Invalidates everything if we end up closing below it and staying below it. So we did close below it as we were getting out of the bull market, 2023. But we managed to, tight candles, and we sort of brought ourselves back up through there. So, yeah. Weren't we promised? I thought we were. 2025 was the Bitcoin bull run, but this Q1 has not been the case. Excuse me. Really struggled with it. Not even looking at Ethereum, I'm just looking at Bitcoin Q1. We don't normally see that in a bull year. So, previous bull run years, 2021, 2017, 2013. It is only -6. And when you actually go down onto the monthly, it was February. February was a shocking month for us. March, bit of a recovery from that. And we've still got 5 days to go, 6 days to go. Maybe we might see that, pull that one around. and we'll jump on next week and see how this quarterly actually closed. But yeah, hasn't been the quarter that we necessarily wanted. Doesn't mean that we have to write off the bull market this year, but we just got to bear that in mind. Someone asked me in the Avenger chat, a lot of the indicators, top and bottom cycle indicators, just haven't triggered yet. And instead of going through them all one by one, because it's just wasting everybody's time, you can go on CoinGlass, and this is a free page you can have a look at. It just lists them all and tells you what it currently is, what the reference should be for it to hit its target, and whether it's hit or not. And we haven't had a single one that has hit yet. And so at the moment, the bull market peak indicators are suggesting actually we need to hold tight. This is no time to be looking to sell because nothing's hit, never mind a 50-50 spread. So that's kind of where we are. I'd like to think when price starts to move up again and we start to see that, I mentioned that I'd probably have a look at this once a month, and maybe we have to go into a bit more detail, but so many of these are so far off right now. It's not something we necessarily need to worry about. Let's just have a quick look at some altcoins on some lower time frames, and then I think we'll wrap it up. We'll start obviously with Tau. So we're on the daily time frame with Tau, and again, last week the two levels I kind of talked about was the 20 EMA, which we're running into right now, and sort of suggesting that 280 level maybe an ideal level. At the time it was 280, obviously it's moved down since then, but maybe a time that we find some challenges from the price action, and then failing that, sort of that 320 to 300, wherever the 50 EMA ends up being by the time we get to there. And so, good to see that we are turning it around. The 10 and the 20 about to cross back over, give it a couple more days. But I just think there's still a lot of work to do. And the thing that I have been using for sidesteps since December has been the 50 EMA on the daily. We haven't hit back at it yet. So decision time for me would be how we interact in and around there. But as we're looking at it at the moment, we have gone 3 or 4 weeks without hitting the 50 EMA. It's likely we see some sort of retracement back to there, and it's just going to be a case of can we break through it. Now, I just don't believe that Tau has the strength on its own to buck the market. So if we do start to see Bitcoin dominance fall away and altcoins start to climb up, then it is highly likely that BitTensor will follow suit with that. It is a good altcoin, it's a solid project, and it's in a strong sector. So once altcoins start to run, I believe BitTensor will do the same. But for it to just defy what the rest of the market is doing, I don't necessarily see it having the ability to do that on its own. Let's have a look at a fib. Let's take it from this drop initially down to where we are. So we have got above the 236, and then we're probably looking at sort of like 300. And depends how many days it takes to get there. That could be an interesting battleground if we wanted to be all the way from the top to the bottom. And that 236 now moves into the same kind of level. Okay, so not much has really been shown from that fib level, but that's kind of where I'm seeing it. I've still got some cash on the side to sort of put into some alts. So the last few weeks I have been buying a lot more Bitcoin, just taking advantage of that, both from a personal and a business side. I had a Bitcoin long, which actually closed yesterday at 88, just because I felt like it was running out of steam and I was just seeing it running some support and resistance. But the reason I talk about sort of the money on the side is I'm still waiting for an ideal time to actually buy some more BitTensor. So I did buy some at 225, I think it was, but I just haven't really felt the urge to buy some of them. I almost did today, just because I thought, am I going to kick myself if this moves? But I've held off just because of where this is at the moment. So we shall just see where it ultimately goes. The 4 hours kind of looking a little bit like what Bitcoin's doing, and I actually like this on the 4 hour. Sort of we're moving sideways, which I've got no problem with, particularly if we're establishing a bottom. We've allowed the EMAs to catch back up with price, and now we're actually building support above where the price action is. Now, unlike Bitcoin, which had a similar M formation, at least BitTensor's been able to make the right-hand side higher than the left-hand side down here. So again, positive to see. 200 EMA in and around about that 290 to 300 level, something to talk about. But again, much like what I said with, let's look at this. All of these vector candles for the last 6-7 weeks have all been taken out. You remember, every vector candle leaves a trail like this, and yet it's clean. I mean, there's a little bit at the top. So I just see these getting retested. I can't unsee that. A retest of the 50 EMA and bouncing off that is strong. So I'm kind of, you could argue it's only $10. Why hold off? I just feel like it's going to head that way, and you buy enough BitTens at $10 each time, it does add up. So I'm going to just wait and see how it does it. I think a move down here just to flush these out before we move back up is something that could happen. And then, you know, whether or not I take a side step or whatever at whenever it hits the 50 EMA, it's just going to solely depend on whether or not we approach that 50 EMA with volume, with speed, we break it or we reject from it, and we go from there. Reese has put, do you have a well-defined exit strategy for this cycle? So I'm going to have to revisit it, because for those of you that followed last year, I had all of my, I don't know where they are, open lists, profit taking sort of levels of what I wanted to do and where it was going to be. And obviously it wasn't on this. Was it on a clean chart? Sorry, I'm going to have to find them. But I kind of drew, you know, prices that I wanted to go through. And I don't want to do that. I don't know what I'm messing around with here. But I had them all drawn out, you know, taking X amount of profit at certain price levels and sort of going from there. And one, I don't hold a lot of these ones anymore. And two, you know, my view on alts versus BTC has probably changed. So I don't necessarily have a well-defined exit strategy. I'm certainly not as optimistic as others in the group in terms of how well I believe altcoins will do this cycle. But I do believe they will have their time in the sun, absolutely. But I will be taking profits throughout, or at least moving into Bitcoin. But anyway, I tell you what we'll do, Reese. I will give me a couple of weeks and I'll start going through some of those again. I need to do it. It's got to be put on the scratch pad of a to-do list, because I don't know I don't know where are they. Let's just do it. Let's see what happens. I don't know where they are. That's the problem. I must have saved them somewhere. I just don't know where. Profit levels. There we go. So that's what I'd done in the past. You know, I'd done it for all of them, and kind of sort of levels that I'd like to sort of take profit and where it is. So that just needs to be revisited. I think Link had done some as well, and had taken some profits on some of those. But anyway, yeah, they need to go through. So I will do that. I need to look at the on-chain metrics, and we'll phase out in equal chunks over an 8-week period around the peak pi cycle tops. Yeah, just so I did that the last cuddle, having a look at topping indicators and sort of which ones had shown good strength. I things like the pi cycle and that I'm going to use. I would just say don't use one in isolation. You know, so whether there's so many here, a lot of them are very similar as well. You know, you don't even have to use these 30. I used other ones outside of this, but just take a few and be like, right, there's actually a lot of information that's kind of been shown there. But these are historically very good ways. But you've also got to remember, most, if not all, of these topping indicators, particularly like pi cycle, are solely for Bitcoin. And altcoins, we've seen some top early, like ADA did last cycle, topped early before Bitcoin did, and then a lot of others topped after. So with altcoins, it can just be a bit, you know, finger in the air with where we think it needs to go. Open anyway. Right, let's just get back into where we were. I mean, Ethereum. So Ethereum on the 4 hour is kind of looking okay. I couldn't be bothered going into it today, but you know, there's a lot of information out at the moment. They're just, you know, people are just not using Ethereum as much as they have done in the past. BNB chain overtook Ethereum in trading or you know, transaction volume for the first time this week, stuff like that. And it has just been a disappointment. I mean, people cheered that we got above 2,000 again, which, you know, we didn't stay below 1,700 for long. But unlike a lot of the other ones, it's just, you know, this one really does feel like we've seen this pattern before. Sharp move down, recovery, sweeps, loses it. Sharp move down, recovery. Are we going to lose it again? And I'm not sure whether or not Ethereum is representative of the rest of the altcoins, because yes, altcoins have struggled just like Ethereum have in recent times, but actually most altcoins have massively outperformed Ethereum during previous mini alt seasons. And so, yeah, that's something to just bear in mind. Maybe something like Solana is a better indicator of alt season at the moment. It's certainly used a lot more. We won't bother going into the benefits of pump fund and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's something to just bear in mind with where that's going. But, you look at a lot of alts near, that's a stronger recovery. You look at the difference between that and Ethereum. Oops, what's happened there? Managed to get through a lot of those EMAs, get through previous price levels, fib levels, everything else, looking a lot stronger there. Link, similar in terms of it is battling its 200 EMA, but it's looking better. Solana, again, strong move, but actually this one, I don't know why I drew, probably because it was on the daily, these fib levels where they were. No, I still don't know why that one's there, to be honest. It's come from there, that's why. So fully retrace that move. Okay. But yeah, running into that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. For any of you that's still short in Milhania token, do you know what? Funnily enough, I put a short in, and I actually got stopped out on this move up here last week. That was a strong move there, and look at it, completely just rejected back down. But yeah, it's kind of stayed in around that. The one thing about the Milhania thing for me was it was just cost me a fortune in fees, so I got stopped out, and it wasn't the best of trades for me. But I had been shorting it a few other times before, so we'll just leave that. But I haven't re-entered. I just think we've seen some sort of funny business in and around here, and it just doesn't seem to want to lose this level. So I'm not willing to waste the fees necessarily on it. Trump, Trump maybe not be a bad shout now, because we've seen it make a recovery back to 20 EMAs plenty of times before, and it's fallen through. And we're kind of at that level at the moment right now. And so there's a fairly good, if you could put your stop 12.5, just above a lot of these other ones with the downward pressure of the 20 EMA anyway, that's probably not a bad shout. And even if you just rode it down to 10, where we've seen it before, it's still a fairly decent move if you use it with leverage. But anyway, that's that one there. I don't really know if there's anything else we really need to go through in terms of where altcoins are and everything else. I'm just sort of scanning through. Nothing really there that sort of strikes me as something to move through. I think most of us are just really in Tau, if not in BTC as well. But yeah, I think the last few days we've seen some good movement, not just on BTC, but actually on altcoins as well. It's great to see. We're starting to run into some levels, especially with lack of volume, which may mean that in the short term, we have that pullback there. But just go back to what I was saying at the beginning. The smart money's still buying, whether it's 76,000 or 88,000, they're buying at the moment. So we may not be able to pick the bottom. We may not be able to pick the bottom with our altcoins. And maybe the altcoin that you decide to buy is the one that bucks a trend and it doesn't recover. But if you picked a solid one, then actually we'll probably find that when the market recovers, altcoins start to move. And regardless of whether we have an alt season or Bitcoin dominance still stays relatively high, if we start to pick up market cap, just generally starts to pick up total market cap, altcoins will recover. It's just whether or not we'll see that boom. We need obviously Bitcoin dominance to drop away for that. But if you had the courage or did have the courage to buy over the last couple of weeks, then at least what you bought will be green. It may not bring your overall pot into the green, but I think we will look back on this as historically as that was a good time to buy. I'm glad I did. I've just been edging. I've just been sort of feeling my way into it. And when I felt it was the right time for Bitcoin, I've happily bought. And, I think it's still in Bitcoin season. I'm happy to be having more Bitcoin than I did. I wish I'd had more of it, to be honest. And that little bit I've got left on the side, I have earmarked it for BitTensor, I'll be honest, but I won't hesitate if I see another altcoin that I have, I think I can pick up at a better opportunity for recovery, or just put it into Bitcoin. Has anyone got any final questions before I knock it on the head? It's been an hour and 5 minutes, it's probably long enough for you all to hear me rambling on. Give everyone a few seconds to do it. Whilst you're doing that, I got an email today to say that the next cuddle is coming out soon. So I think it's in May, it's the weekend after the bank holiday. I know there's 2 bank holidays in May, but the first. So it's going to be like the 10th of May or something like that. So hopefully you'll be there. We've got a trading pub, as always, on Thursday. Don't think any of us come through. So just want to say, hey, thanks again for you listening to me drone on for an hour or so. If you've got any questions, as always, tag me, message me, whatever it may be. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of tonight, today, however it is you find watching this. And yeah, I shall speak to you all soon. Cheers now.